Christopher Newport University students say the school violated their right to free speech.
That's because university employees pulled campus newspapers to protect the university's image. This all stems from an article printed in the paper shortly after a suspected meth lab was found on campus about 2 weeks ago. 10 on Your Side's Katie Collette is here now to explain what students and the university president have to say about this. Katie?
Tom and Alvita, that possible meth lab bust on campus, front page news in this edition of the Captain's Log. But when a campus tour of prospective students and their parents came through last Wednesday, this paper was nowhere to be found. During campus tours at Christopher Newport University, the student newspaper known as the Captain's Log can be found in many buildings.
When I was in high school and I went on a college campus tour, I would pick up the newspaper just to see what it is, see what it's like, see what the students' voice is like.
But Emily Cole, editor-in-chief of the Captain's Log, says 1 week ago the CNU student's voice was silenced.
2 of my editors texted me and let me know that papers were missing.
Emily investigated and found a university employee who removed hundreds of papers.
He said that he had been told by the administration to take the papers away from the stands and hide them, essentially.
A university spokesperson says 140 prospective students and their parents toured campus at the time the paper was pulled. Had it been there, this is the front page story they'd have seen.
A campus newspaper is not a PR magazine. We're not going to cover something just for the sake of it making the school look good, but we also don't cover things to make the school look bad. We just cover what's newsworthy.
Emily demanded the papers be restocked and fired off an email to University President Paul Tribble. Shortly after, Tribble released a statement to students saying university employees acting on their own initiative removed copies of the paper from stands. He says those behind the move were young employees who love CNU and were concerned the meth lab article would create a bad impression for visiting prospective students. Emily disappointed in Tribble's response.
It was pretty offensive to me because it made it sound like I don't love CNU, and as the newspaper staff, we don't love CNU, so we cover the meth lab story. That's not the case at all. The school did more damage by removing papers than the meth lab story ever would have done.
And in his statement, Paul Tribble says those responsible for removing the papers have been disciplined. Of course, we're still working to find out who exactly ordered the removal. Tribble is out of town this week and will not take our calls to answer our questions, but we will continue working to get answers for you. Katie Collette, 10 on Your Side.
One more note here. Workers returned the newspapers to the racks immediately after Emily complained. They were not back in time for the first tour of students. A second tour took place later in the afternoon with the newspapers back on the shelves.